It's funny. When you decide to build or like renovate a house, everyone just completely obsesses over the visible stuff.
Oh, absolutely. The countertops, the paint colors.
Right. You want the marble, the brass fixtures, the perfect shade of gray for the living room. It's the fun part. But nobody really wants to sit down and talk about the plumbing.
Yeah, well, right up until a pipe bursts behind the drywall and completely floods your kitchen.
Exactly.
I mean, infrastructure is entirely invisible to us right up until the exact moment it fails.
And if we're being honest here, that has basically been the story of the smart home industry for, what, the last decade?
Easily a decade.
Yeah. We've just been aggressively buying the countertops, right? Flashy gadgets, neon lights, those really cheap Wi-Fi plugs that beep for no reason.
Oh, I hate those.
But the pipes, like the actual network protocols and the back-end servers, they've been leaking from day one. I mean, devices drop offline randomly, ecosystems actively refuse to talk to each other, and you end up with like 6 different apps just to turn off your living room. It's just incredibly messy.
It is, but the landscape is noticeably shifting right now. If you look closely at the major moves happening this week, the big platforms are, they're finally calling the plumber.
Yeah, they really are.
They're shifting focus away from that flashy novelty phase and putting real weight behind serious infrastructure, true reliability, and, finding sustainable ways to actually pay for it all.
Which brings us to today. Welcome to this week's deep dive into smart home news. We've got a lot of ground to cover, from Google Nest, Home Assistant, SmartThings, Thread Group, and some great hardware reporting from The Verge.
A very busy week.
Very. And the clear theme is maturation. The era of the short-term gadget is ending. So today we're going to look at the first major attempt to fix probably the most broken pipe in your house, which is the user experience.
Because Google is officially entering the Gemini era for the home.
Right. Let's get into this.
So they just announced the new Google Home speaker. It's launching on June 25th for about $100, like $99.
Okay, pretty standard pricing.
Yeah, and it comes in hazel, porcelain, jade, and berry. But honestly, the physical hardware, like the fabric and the glowing lights, that's not the real story here at all.
No, it's what's inside.
Exactly. This is the first audio device built specifically from the ground up to run their Gemini AI model natively. And it includes premium stuff like Gemini Live.
See, I am really curious how this actually changes the day-to-day experience for you and your family. Because historically, talking to a voice assistant hasn't felt, smart at all.
Not even a little bit.
It feels like using a command line interface, but with your voice.
Yeah.
You have to memorize the exact syntax. You stand there in your kitchen saying, turn on living room light 1, and if you say lamp instead of light,
the whole system just completely fails.
It just gives up.
And that frustration exists because those older voice assistants, they relied on rigid intent matching.
Right.
They listened for a specific wake word, and then they scanned your sentence for a hard-coded trigger phrase. It was essentially looking up a phrase in a static dictionary.
So if you deviate at all,
it throws an error. But Gemini completely changes this mechanism by using a large language model to process intent contextually.
So it actually parses the meaning of the words you are saying, rather than just mashing a phrase to a rigid database.
Precisely. It allows you to give the system multi-step reasoning tasks in a single natural breath. Like you could walk in and say, dim the kitchen lights, play something relaxing, and let me know when 20 minutes is up.
Wow, all at once.
Yeah, Gemini parses those as 3 distinct executable commands. It understands the context of the room you're in, and it executes them without needing you to pause or use some rigid syntax.
Honestly, the feature that really caught my eye is the mid-sentence correction. Because I do this constantly.
Oh, everyone does.
I'll say, turn off the coffee maker. Wait, no, I meant turn it on. And the old systems would just panic.
Or they'd throw an error code or just execute the very first command they recognized.
Right. But Gemini is designed to actually understand that conversational pivot.
Yeah.
Which is huge.
It really is. It also utilizes what Google is calling short-term memory, meaning you don't have to keep shouting the wake word for follow-up questions within a given time frame.
Which saves so much annoyance.
Well, it represents a critical stepping stone for the entire industry. For years, the only people with truly automated, reliable smart homes were power users who spent their weekends programming complex logic gates on local servers.
Yeah, the mass market consumer simply isn't going to do that.
Never. A conversational interface that actually forgives natural human error is the only way everyday people will fully adopt home automation.
I hear that. I really do. But we have to look closely at the cost of that hyper-personalized intelligence.
The privacy aspect.
Exactly. Because to get a system that deeply understands context, the system requires context. And part of this Gemini rollout includes a major update to Google's Familiar Faces feature for their smart cameras.
Right, which is moving way beyond just scanning your face.
It is. The updated system now uses non-biometric signals. It analyzes the color of your clothing, your overall body size, your shape, just to identify you, even if you're facing completely away from the camera lens.
Yep, and to maintain that accuracy, it continuously updates its internal library with the most recent images of everyone walking around the house.
See, I have to push back on this being a pure win for the consumer. Are we really willing to trade the privacy of our home's internal data just for a bit of convenience?
It's a valid question.
We're allowing a cloud server to continuously map the bodies, the outfits, and the movements of our family members just so we don't have to repeat ourselves, or so we can ask Gemini if the dog got on the couch. That feels like a massive surveillance footprint just to get a smarter butler.
It is a massive footprint, but I mean, it's the fundamental, unavoidable trade-off of cloud-based AI. Contextual intelligence just requires a high-fidelity, continuous stream of data about your life to function. Google is gambling that consumers will find features like camera history search, where you can just ask natural language questions about your security footage, so convenient that they'll just accept the surveillance aspect.
Convenience usually wins out.
Yeah.
But, a genius voice assistant is totally useless if the smart plug it's trying to turn on won't stay connected.
And very true.
The brain needs a functioning nervous system. And if the cloud is the brain, the local protocols are the nerves.
Which brings us to the actual foundation of the home. This week, we saw some massive, much-needed updates to the Thread protocol.
And Thread has desperately needed these updates.
Yeah.
For context, Thread was engineered to be the savior of smart home connectivity. It's a low-power, low-latency mesh network.
Instead of everything hitting the Wi-Fi router.
Exactly. Instead of every single smart bulb trying to talk directly to your central router, which clogs up your bandwidth Thread devices talk to each other, they pass messages along like a digital bucket brigade.
Right. If one device drops offline, the network supposedly heals itself by finding a new path around the broken link.
The key word there is supposedly. Because for a lot of everyday users, matter-over-thread networks have operated like a complete black box.
Oh, completely blind.
You buy a new smart bulb, you plug it in, it refuses to connect, and there's no screen or interface to tell you why. You're just left staring at a spinning loading wheel on your phone.
Well, the Thread group is finally addressing that friction head-on. They announced 3 major updates this week, starting with a feature called Thread Direct.
Okay.
This allows you to onboard a new Thread device using only the built-in Thread radio in your smartphone. Newer iPhones and Google Pixels actually have these radios built in natively now.
Wait, so you don't need a border router for the initial setup anymore?
Nope.
Because that concept alone, like trying to explain what a border router is to my mom, has been incredibly confusing for the average buyer. Is this the feature that finally makes Matter plug and play for someone who doesn't even know what a border router is?
It absolutely is. Let's clarify the mechanism of a border router really quickly. In that bucket brigade of Thread devices, the border router is the single device that translates the Thread network-specific language into standard Wi-Fi or Ethernet.
So it can actually talk to your home network and the internet.
Right. It's the bridge. And historically, to add a Thread device to your home, that bridge had to be present, powered on, and functioning perfectly during the initial setup.
Which meant you needed to own an Apple TV or a specific Google Nest Hub or a HomePod. And if you didn't know that, your brand new smart plug was essentially a plastic paperweight.
Exactly. But Thread Direct removes that massive barrier to entry. By using your smartphone as a temporary bridge, you can get the device out of the box, onto the network, and functioning immediately. It just makes the technology available to more people without requiring them to buy a secondary hub right out of the gate.
That solves the onboarding issue, sure.
Yeah.
But what about the black box problem when things break down, like 6 months later?
That leads to their second announcement, the Thread Tools app. Yeah, it's currently in beta for Android and iOS, and this finally gives power users, installers, and even frustrated homeowners real-time network diagnostics.
So you aren't just guessing anymore.
Right. Instead of guessing why a device is unresponsive, you can actually look at the health of your mesh. You can see signal strength, check how the nodes are routing data, and identify exactly where the bucket brigade is dropping the water.
This is exactly what anyone building a serious smart home has been begging for.
Long overdue.
Really is. But I want to dig into their third announcement because it sounds incredibly dry on paper, but it might have the biggest long-term structural impact on how our homes operate.
The broadband stuff.
Yes. The Thread Group signed a formal liaison agreement with the Broadband Forum regarding something called TR-369 environments. What does that actually mean for the physical hardware sitting in my living room?
So TR-369 is a management protocol that internet service providers use to securely manage the standard routers and gateways they install in your house. By integrating Thread directly into this standard, it means the generic Wi-Fi router your ISP hands you will be built to natively understand and route Thread traffic.
So the end goal here is that your basic Comcast or AT&T router seamlessly handles your smart home network, and you don't have to buy or manage a secondary smart home hub at all.
That is the ultimate objective, yeah. It formally aligns the wireless device network directly with your home's broadband connectivity layer.
Wow. But, if the internet service providers are moving to control the hardware layer, it creates a really fascinating contrast with what is happening in the open source community.
It really does.
Because the most impressive implementation of network visibility this week isn't coming from big tech or big broadband, it's coming from Home Assistant.
Right. Home Assistant is pushing an incredibly aggressive and impressive update to its Matter integration. To put their current scale in perspective, Matter is now actively running on 38% of all Home Assistant instances.
That's huge.
It has rapidly become their 12th most popular integration globally.
That adoption rate is staggering for an open source platform. It really just shows how hungry users are for local control that actually functions reliably.
Absolutely.
So what is the core upgrade they're rolling out?
Working in partnership with the Open Home Foundation, they have completely ripped out their old Python and C++ Matter server.
That's totally gone.
Ripped it out. They replaced it with a brand new backend built entirely on Matter.js.
Now, I know we generally want to avoid getting bogged down in coding languages here, but why does switching to a JavaScript backend actually matter for the end user? How does it make their house run better?
It really comes down to system agility and architecture. I mean, Python and C++ are incredibly robust languages, but for the highly asynchronous, event-driven nature of a smart home.
Where dozens of things are firing at once.
Right. Motion sensors, light switches, timers, all firing off data simultaneously and unpredictably. For that matter, .js offers a much more nimble, responsive framework.
Okay, that makes sense.
It also brings the platform fully up to the Matter 1.5.1 specification and adds Thread 1.4 support. And crucially, they are also natively blocking uncertified development devices out of the box, which hardens the baseline security of the entire system.
But the feature that is going to make people actually rush to upgrade is the new network visualization UI. This is phenomenal work.
It's beautiful.
Home Assistant now generates a literal interactive map of your entire Thread and Wi-Fi network, like an X-ray for your house.
It visualizes the entire mesh topology. Every single device appears as a node right on your screen.
And it doesn't just show you that the devices exist. It shows you exactly how they behave. It tells you the specific role of the device. Like, is it a leader node with a little crown icon? Is it a routing node that passes messages along the chain? Or is it a sleepy end device, like a battery-powered door sensor that only wakes up for a millisecond when the door opens?
Exactly. And beyond the roles, it maps the actual physical hops the data takes across your house. It also color codes the connection strength between those nodes.
Oh, it's so helpful.
Green for a strong signal, stepping down through orange, red, and finally gray for a dead signal.
It is essentially a live traffic control map for your data. For years, we've just had invisible radio waves bouncing off our drywall, and we just had to cross our fingers that the kitchen light bulb heard the switch.
Hoping for the best.
Right. Now you can look at the topology of your network and see, oh, the signal is completely dying at the hallway plug. That's why the bedroom lights won't respond. It gives you the power to actually engineer your setup rather than just guessing. And they're also utilizing a proxy all the things approach to keep older legacy devices working within this modern architecture.
Which is vital. That proxy approach prevents perfectly good older hardware from just becoming e-waste. But looking at the bigger picture, this visualization tool elevates Home Assistant entirely.
It really does.
It is rapidly shedding that old reputation of being just a hobbyist tinkering platform. They are arguably offering the most robust, transparent Matter controller on the market, setting the absolute industry standard for what local control should look like.
Which highlights a massive philosophical divide in the industry right now.
Oh, massive.
The open source world is doubling down on local control, where you own the hardware and manage the processing power yourself within your own walls. Meanwhile, the corporate platforms are facing a harsh reality.
Server costs.
Maintaining massive, cloud-based smart home infrastructure is incredibly expensive. We are seeing the end of the free ride, specifically with Samsung SmartThings this week.
Yeah, SmartThings is evolving its API infrastructure. I mean, they have to support a massive base of 460 million registered users.
That's a lot of data.
It's a ton. So they announced that starting in October 2026, they're introducing dedicated, paid commercial API tiers, and they're also launching a $4.99 per month plan for non-commercial individual developers.
Okay, they noted that free access is still available through the third quarter of 2026, but the writing is clearly on the wall here. And I look at this and I completely understand the deep frustration from power users.
Oh, they're furious.
Because these are the developers and enthusiasts who wrote custom device handlers and essentially built the SmartThings community in its early days.
Yep.
To suddenly turn around and charge them $5 a month? Is it fair to pull a bait and switch on them? Or is this just the realistic cost of doing business? Didn't Samsung know how much servers cost when they bought the platform?
Well, the free tier was an acquisition strategy. It was a land grab to build market share. But let's look at the underlying mechanics of why a cloud-dependent ecosystem costs so much to run in the first place.
Okay.
When your home relies on cloud-to-cloud integration, every single action requires a massive data commute. If a motion sensor detects movement in your kitchen, that tiny piece of data has to travel out of your house, hit an Amazon AWS server, travel to a Samsung server, process the logic of your automation, and travel all the way back to your house just to turn on a light bulb.
And it has to do that round trip in fractions of a second so you aren't standing in the dark.
Exactly. Now multiply that continuous state maintenance, that constant pinging, and the rate limiting across 460 million users.
Well, mind-boggling.
That requires immense continuous server compute power. Server racks require electricity, cooling, maintenance. SmartThings is being forced to transition to a structured, paid model to ensure the platform remains stable, especially as they scale up massive enterprise deployments for property tech, apartment complexes, and energy management systems.
The takeaway there is pretty simple, honestly. If you rely on someone else's computer to run your house, eventually you're going to have to pay their electric bill.
That is the unavoidable reality of cloud computing. If you want to avoid those recurring costs, you need to rely on local hubs and incredibly durable hardware.
Which means the physical gear you choose to install in your walls needs to be bulletproof. You cannot afford to buy a gadget that gets bricked because a cloud server shuts down or one that refuses to talk to the rest of your local network. And if you're trying to figure out which devices actually fit your setup, smarthomecompare.com can help you compare smart home products by ecosystem, features, compatibility, and integrations before you buy.
It is vital to research that interoperability first, so you aren't just buying future e-waste.
Exactly. So let's look at some hardware that solves real problems, especially with Prime Day context right now.
Yeah, the trend is moving firmly away from gimmicks and towards solving actual physical pain points in the home. Take the Jackery fridge guard, for example.
This is perhaps the most pragmatic piece of tech I've seen in a while.
Right.
It's a 2.6 3-inch slim power station. It provides an 800-watt output and houses a 1 kilowatt-hour battery. And its entire purpose is to be tucked out of sight behind or on top of your refrigerator.
It features a 10 millisecond UPS switchover. So if your neighborhood loses power, the fridge guard instantly takes over, keeping the compressor running and keeping your food from spoiling for about 10 hours.
Wow.
It doesn't have flashing RGB lights or a touch screen. It just solves a critical infrastructure failure. Practical reliability over gadget hype.
We are also seeing home robotics mature past the novelty phase.
Yeah.
The Roborock Saros 20 is making waves right now. It's listed at $1,359.99. And, older robot vacuums were famous for just bumping into chair legs and getting stranded on living room rugs.
Yeah, the Saros 20 addresses physical limitations. Beyond the Matter compatibility and the high suction power 36,000 Pa, which essentially just means it can pull fine dust out of deep carpets, the mechanical standout is its dynamic chassis.
Right.
It can physically lift itself to climb a 2-inch threshold.
Which is huge for everyday use. Most homes have transition strips between hardwood and tile or between rooms. If a robot vacuum can't cross that physical strip, it's not an autonomous cleaner.
It's just a toddler you have to constantly carry from room to room.
Exactly. And in the access control category, we are seeing a major shift in the fundamental protocols used for proximity unlocking. the Aquara Smart Lock U400.
Oh, yeah. This features ultra-wideband, or UWB, technology alongside Apple's Home Key support.
Explain why UWB is superior to what we've been using. Because we've had auto-unlock features over Bluetooth for years, and they are notoriously finicky.
Very finicky.
Half the time I end up just using my keys anyway.
Right. Well, Bluetooth auto-unlock relies entirely on signal strength to guess how close you are to the door. But a strong signal could just mean you are standing in the kitchen right next to the front door, and it accidentally unlocks while you are inside.
Which is a security nightmare.
Exactly. UWB doesn't measure signal strength, it measures the time of flight of the radio waves. It calculates the exact nanoseconds it takes for the signal to bounce between your phone and the lock, giving it pinpoint spatial awareness.
So it actually knows where you are.
It knows exactly what side of the door you are standing on.
That changes access from a guessing game to precision security. And finally, a product that fixes perhaps the oldest, most infuriating argument in the smart home. The physical light switch.
Ah, yes.
Philips Hue has launched their wired wall modules. Now, caveat here, these are currently Europe only, but the concept is absolutely essential.
You install these modules directly behind your existing dumb wall switches. They wire into the circuit to maintain constant, uninterrupted power to your smart bulbs at all times.
So when a guest walks into your guest room and naturally flips the physical switch down, it doesn't sever the electricity to your expensive smart bulb.
Exactly.
The bulb stays powered, it stays online, it still acts as a routing node for your Thread mesh network, and the module simply turns off the light via software. Instead of trying to train your family and guests to never touch the wall switches, the technology just adapts to natural human behavior.
Which really brings us full circle to the theme of the week. The smart home is finally maturing.
It really is. The novelty is wearing off, and the serious engineering is taking over. I mean, we have Gemini trying to make voice control contextual rather than rigid. We have Thread Direct and Home Assistant's visualization tools finally giving us the ability to diagnose and repair our own local networks.
And we're seeing the true long-term cost of cloud infrastructure with platforms like SmartThings.
Yep.
But, all of this integration brings up a completely different challenge that we really need to watch closely as this industry matures. We talked earlier about the Thread Group working with the Broadband Forum to put IoT controls directly into your ISP's router.
Right, the TR369 stuff.
Yeah. It sounds incredibly convenient to not need a separate hub. But if the generic router provided by your internet company natively manages your smart locks, your internal cameras, and your motion sensors, what happens when that ISP inevitably suffers a data breach?
Oh, wow. I hadn't even considered that layer of exposure.
We are collapsing the boundary between the public internet connection and the private operational technology of your home. If your network isn't segmented properly, a vulnerability at the ISP level suddenly becomes a physical security vulnerability at your front door.
That is a terrifying but very necessary thought to leave on. As platforms shift to subscriptions and cloud AI, you really have to choose. Pay for convenience or learn to manage a local server yourself.
The choices are getting starker.
They are. Building a reliable smart home is a serious craft, and understanding the plumbing is the only way to keep the house standing. If you found this episode useful for navigating your own smart home journey, please rate the podcast and leave us a comment on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. We'll be back next week.